Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. Always a pleasure to have Natasha Panagis from the Institute of Financial Professionals of Australia. We are continuing on the life insurance Part 4 about life insurance inside super. And for those of you that aren't aware, we broadcast locally on Radio Northern Beaches and around Australia. We are syndicated through the Community Radio Network, compliments of the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia. I know it's a big mouthful, but I like to let people know that out in the country areas that actually pick up the show, we know you, we hear you, we see you. I occasionally get some emails from the uni finance students at the Uni of New England. So it's really nice to hear from you guys. Thank you so kindly. And so I thought I'd have a bit of a hip hooray to you guys, and thanks for your feedback. And I know, Natasha, a lot of people at IFPA, all the tax agents that are part of the IFPA Association, which is the next layer down, ladies and gentlemen. So you've got CAs, CPAs, and then you've got the tax agents, equally as important, who are providing a lot of very, very vital taxation services to a whole range of Australians. And Natasha, you and I had the chance to meet up with a whole bunch of them recently in Melbourne for the annual conference. And so, ladies and gents, we're continuing on life insurance part 4 in superannuation. And this time we're covering income protection. So I think, Natasha, one of the definitions I think are really important in super. Maybe it would do well if you would explain the definitions between income protection and, say, TPD. I think is a really good starting point.
Yeah, of course. So today we're all talking about income protection. From a super perspective, you can hold that within your fund. And let's go back a level. If you're holding insurance within your super fund, any insured benefits that will be paid will be firstly paid to the trustee of your super fund, because the trustee of the fund owns the policy on your behalf. So the insurance proceeds will then be paid to you as the insured member, providing a superannuation law condition of release is met. Now, condition of release is a requirement that you need to meet to be able to get money and proceeds out of your fund. And today we're talking about income protection. Under income protection, you need to meet the temporary incapacity condition of release. So under the law, you are considered temporarily incapacitated if physical or mental ill health causes you to stop work temporarily. Now, if your fund is satisfied that you meet this definition, that you are temporarily incapacitated, then they are permitted to pay you a regular income, at least on a monthly basis, to continue those salary and those wages that you were receiving before you stopped work. Now, just note that this income can't be more than what you were earning before, and it must stop when you make a full return to work. Now, I just wanted to also flag that the law doesn't allow temporary incapacity benefits to be released from the part of your fund that comes from your employer's compulsory contributions. So
these are the SG payments.
Correct, yeah. So you can't access your super guarantee or your SG contributions. So what that means is, if you meet this definition of temporary incapacity, then those income protection payments must come from the income protection insurance that is held within your fund, or other amounts that are held in your fund, such as any additional employer contributions above the super guarantee or the SG amount. And these are things like salary sacrifice, but we can talk about more about that later, because there is a nice little strategy to consider that could work for you.
So I guess to encapsulate this, ladies and gentlemen, this is part 4 now of a 4-part series, and the first few parts we were talking about life insurance itself, then we were talking about terminal illness, and then temporary disability, and now this is a temporary incapacity. So this is, let's say, for example, a good example might be a car accident would be a good example, don't you think?
Yeah. So you could be, let's just say you're a tradie, you get into a car accident and you're unable to work, you've broken your leg or you've broken your arm and you can't do the trades that you were doing. So in that period of time where you're unable to work, this is where you may be able to, meet that definition and get those income protection payments whilst you're recovering and you can go back. So that's temporary. You're temporarily unable to work. Whereas, Ray, you mentioned, well, what's the difference between temporary incapacity and permanent incapacity? Well, permanent incapacity is where you're totally and permanently disabled. And under that, well, your fund will release your super and your TPD or your total and permanent disability benefits if the trustee is satisfied that your physical or mental ill health makes it unlikely that you will return. Sorry, let me go back. The trustee is satisfied that your physical or mental ill health makes it unlikely that you will return to an occupation that your education, training, or experience makes you suitable for. So the main difference, temporary incapacity refers to a condition where your ill health, whether that's physical, whether that's mental, temporarily prevents you from working, but you are expected to recover and expected to return to your previous occupation. Whereas permanent incapacity, on the other hand, indicates a long-term or a permanent inability to work due to illness, injury, or disability, making it unlikely for you to ever return back to your previous role. So that's the key difference: temporary, permanent.
Yeah, I think they're very good things to differentiate and pass clearly so that people understand. A lot of the circumstances we've been talking about in previous shows with regards to life insurance within super really relates to big ticket items like cancer or leukemia or some quite end of life kind of thing that happens. And it's pretty devastating, and all of a sudden you get whacked with this nice big chunk of money, which is kind of nice in a way, particularly if you've got terminal illness, because it helps you look after affairs and helps you do a whole range of things. But now we're talking about everyday kind of occurrences that do happen. I mean, man, car accidents, broken legs, a temporary thing, certainly up our way, people that, a lot of tradies will go surfing at lunchtimes, they come back with a fin cut or whatever, and all of a sudden they can't work. They need to understand what their abilities to be able to sustain themselves if they're not able to work. And super and I think income protection within that realms is important. Now, one of the things that we're going to discuss about today, I'm going to talk about future service deductions, but before we do, I want to talk about having income protection in super and outside of super, because there are some key differences. So what are the key differences between having it in super and out of super?
Yeah, so regardless if you have it inside super or outside super, those premiums will be deductible. So if you own it personally, the policy personally, those premiums will generally be 100% deductible to you. But if your super fund owns the policy, then those policy premiums will also be deductible to your super fund. Now, from a deductibility point of view, there's very little difference whether it's owned by you or your fund, because it will be generally deductible. But the tax treatment will be different. Let's just say it's held within super. Even though you may get an income protection or temporary incapacity benefits paid to you from your super fund, just remember that these are not going to be considered superannuation benefits, and they won't be taxed as superannuation benefits. Instead, they will be treated as if it's your normal assessable income, and it'll be taxed at your marginal rate of tax, similar to any other, just as you would get paid as your salary or wages would get taxed. So that is how it'll be taxed.
Exactly. You've got to think of it just like a normal salary package, and whatever taxes you've been paying. And again, you've mentioned that you can't get more, and normally income protection is 75% of your normal salary. I think, if I remember from my old days when I was an FP, I think that was a standard number. So it can't be more than 100%, but even that 75% is taxed at your normal marginal rate. It's not like a superannuant that's retired and they're getting their money out of super tax-free. This is taxed as usual. So that's a big gotcha, isn't it?
It is, and that's what you do. The whole idea is just to, allow you to continue to receive your salary or your wages during this temporary period where you can't work. And the reason why it's not 100% covering 100% of your income is because there needs to be an incentive for you to return to work.
Exactly.
So, whether it's replacing 75% of your salary or a little bit more, a little bit less, it can't be 100% because there needs to be an incentive for you to get better and get back to work. Otherwise, where's the incentive? You'd probably stay on those benefits for as long as you probably could.
I think what I read with interest in your article as well that we're sourcing today's discussions around is that when the super funds start paying these amounts in income protection, they don't have pay-as-you-go type software arrangements. So the other gotcha that people have to understand is, let's say they're getting, I'm just going to pluck a number, $5,000 a month in protection payment. That doesn't have tax deducted. So they've also got to start thinking, okay, if I was getting a normal salary and my gross was $5,000, I need to put money aside as well at the end of the year for tax. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So if you've got, say, your income protection in your super fund and your super fund's paying you those payments, your super fund trustee is going to deduct that pay-as-you-go withholding tax before it passes the income protection payment to you, and so that'll already be net of tax. Whereas if you held that income protection policy outside of super in your own personal name, then there will be no pay-as-you-go tax deducted. So you'll need to make sure that you've got enough cash aside come tax return time for you to pay that tax that should have been taken out for those income protection payments if you're holding that policy outside of super. So it's already done for you in super, but you'll need to just factor that in if you're holding it outside of super.
And one would imagine if in self-managed super fund instances where they're holding income protection insurance on behalf of their members, they would then need to either deduct tax or make sure that the member knows you're getting this cash and you've got to put the money aside. I think it's just one of those big flags. We've got to make sure, guys, this gets taxed at regular rates. So, you don't get as much as you think you might. So I think it's a worthwhile a little flag there to make sure, you've got the money coming in, but just make sure you're dividing up that money in the correct buckets and making sure the taxman gets paid along the way. So look, we're just about half time here. You're on Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. I'm really pleased to have Natasha Panagis from the Institute of Financial Professionals of Australia. She is a superannuation expert. We're talking about life insurance within super. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back with you in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. I have at the microphone this week Natasha Panagis from the Institute of Financial Professionals. She's a superannuation expert, and we are talking about life insurance within superannuation. And specifically today, we're talking about temporary incapacity and how we cover that with income protection insurance. Now, before we went to the break, Natasha, we were talking about having IP cover either within or without, outside of super. Now, there are fairly obvious benefits going one way or the other. So let's cover some of them up. What are the pros of actually taking income protection insurance within super? What are some of the big advantages of doing that?
I think the first one is that your premiums can be a lot more manageable. Because you can pay for your premiums using your employer contributions, so your SG or your super guarantee contributions, or you can be making personal contributions, or if you're not making any contributions, you can simply just use your existing super balance to pay for those premiums, which can really help ease that pressure off your day-to-day cash flow. So that is, I think, one of the biggest advantages there. The second advantage is that you can make tax efficient contributions. So you can enjoy some tax savings if you make some personal deductible contributions into super, or if you're contributing by way of salary sacrifice. What you're doing here is you're effectively using pre-tax income to fund your premiums at a lower after-tax cost. So I think that's up there as well. And I think the other one is, we mentioned it before, is that your super fund withholds the tax on any income protection benefit payments that they pay you.
Yeah,
so when they pay you the benefits, that tax is already withheld. You don't have to worry about that when it comes to tax time and doing your tax return, because that tax has been withheld. Whereas, it's slightly different if you're holding it outside of super.
Now, I guess, and cost of living is just one of those things that you just can't get away from, because it's in the media all the time. The politicians love flogging it to death, either side, doesn't matter who you're talking about. But income protection is one of those types of cover that certainly over the past 5 to 8 years really has been decimated by the premium increases, and the fact that mental health has really come into the fore. And having talked to many underwriters and many policy providers out there, it's tough to get income protection these days because, again, definitions, we were talking before about whether it's the work that you've done before, any work. So, does your income protection cover you in various circumstances? But it's not a cheap form of cover, is it?
No, it isn't. And yes, we've seen premiums rise quite dramatically over the last few years. And as you say, for all of those reasons. So, there's ways that we can look at making it more affordable for people to retain rather than cancel their policies, particularly if, they've got lots of other expenses to worry about. Funding it from super can really help if you're having cash flow problems, in that you still got that backup plan, you have that policy. If something were to happen to you, it can get paid out. So, where you can, I would suggest making contributions to at least negate that premium cost that's coming out of your balance, just to top it up, because that is one of the downsides to holding insurance inside super, in that if you're not making contributions to your fund, then those premiums that are paid from your balance can lead to an erosion of your retirement savings. It's good to at least top it back up to what it was if you've got the available contribution cap space within your fund. So that's just one thing to think about.
And I think anybody contemplating this, talk to your advisors about this, because this is something, look, your advisors will know certain stages of life. There are certain times that you're going to need money to pay a mortgage. It's just the facts are. And, my phase of my life, I'm certainly on the cusp of, looking forward to a retirement in the not too distant future. So my circumstances are very, very different to somebody with a young family, trying to pay off a house. And protecting your income at that time of your life is incredibly important. But we all know, as you've rightly said, Natasha, it's darn expensive these days, but who can afford not to necessarily have it? So I think when you talk to people, particularly your advisors, they will work out, and they've got the spreadsheets, they know the actuaries, and they've done the numbers, and there's more than enough good empirical data out there that might suggest, and everyone's going to be different, but might suggest that doing this within super, even though it compromises your end of retirement type of balance, that can be offset. One of the things I love talking to people about, and Stuart Sheary from IFPA came and spoke about it as well, downsizer contributions. So if you are able to, do this and keep your house and keep your mortgage going, etc., and still have your income protection going, you can then make use of that, the 10-year rule, and being able to sell your house and then chucking a big chunk of that capital gain into super. So there are pluses and minuses each way. But again, one of the things, Natasha, I might get you to comment on, that always assumes that superannuation laws are going to stay the same, say, from now 10 to 15 years' time, right?
Yeah, exactly. We can only go with what we know at the moment and what the laws say. I mean, they were some of the advantages of holding income protection in super, but there are some limitations, or some cons, if you will, for holding income protection insurance in super. The first one is access to benefits may be a little more restricted because to receive payments, you must meet two lots of criteria. The first one is the policy definition of incapacity, and the second one is that temporary incapacity condition of release under super law. So, that's the one where you have to have ceased work due to illness or injury to meet that condition of release. So you've got to meet those two lots of conditions. Whereas if you held it outside of super, all you need to meet is the policy definition of incapacity. You don't have to worry about the temporary incapacity super condition of release. So that's one thing to think about. The other one is a potential delay in payment. Since the insurer pays the benefit to the super fund trustee first, then there is an extra step there before the member will receive their income. So that's another thing to note. We talked about the fact that insurance premiums, if they're paid from your member balance and you're not replenishing your member balance, then that could lead to erosion of your retirement savings. So that's really important to consider too. The other thing is if you're going to be making contributions to top up your fund, remember contributions that you make into your fund will count towards one of your contribution caps, whether it's your concessional contribution cap, which is generally your employer contributions or your, any pre-tax contributions that you're making, or your non-concessional cap, which is, your extra after-tax contributions that you put into your fund. So it's going to count towards one of your caps, and you've just got to be mindful of that. If you've already made quite large contributions, you don't want to exceed these caps because exceeding these caps can mean extra tax. So we want to avoid that.
You get penalised, yeah.
Yes. So important to note that. One last thing, Ray, is ancillary benefits. If you're holding an insurance policy outside of super, they generally include lots of bells and whistles. Whereas if you're holding an income protection policy inside super law restricts your benefit payments to a non-commutable income stream that just replaces your pre-incapacity income due to incapacity.
Very vanilla. Vanilla.
You can't get all your extra, features like your, home care or trauma, illness, extra payouts, all the extra bells and whistles that you could have outside super, you can't have them paid from an inside super income protection policy. So factor that in as well. I've got to say, most cases you'll see income protection policies held outside of super because it's easier to meet and, you can have all the bells and whistles and all of that. It's not so common to have it inside super, but you can still have it inside super.
So one of the things you mentioned as a real delay, I've read not just in income protection payments, but also just in general death benefit payments. Some of the super companies have been quite tardy, and I'm reading the financial press where some of these can range 12, 15, 18 months delay where the beneficiaries are hanging on a thread and not getting paid their benefits. Is that something that's being looked at, or is it sort of just a one-off, or is that something that you're seeing as increasingly burdensome and they're just taking too long?
Yeah, it is. It's a big issue. The regulator is certainly aware of it and is looking into it. All the large APRA super funds, I suppose, have been spoken to. So let's just say that it is a huge issue, and we won't name names, but the funds are aware that they need to improve benefits being paid out to members and their beneficiaries in such a time of need. So yes, it is an issue. But
you sit there and shrug your shoulders and going, what are you doing, guys? These poor people, they've lost their loved one and you're hanging them out to dry. It's like, pay the darn benefit. I scratch my head when I've read these stories because, I don't even think the superannuation trustees themselves are looking at it going, why is this happening? I mean, it's just one of those things. Now, we've got one final thing we need to cover off, future service deductions. Now, we've talked about FSD, future service deductions in other premiums. What do we talking about future service deductions now with income protection? Is it as relevant?
Not so. So this is just a different option. Rather than claiming a deduction for your insurance premiums, this future service deduction is effectively claiming a deduction for the insurance premiums paid in the year that a death or a disability benefit is paid. And so you can effectively claim a deduction based on how long the member could have worked right up until age 65 if they had not, say, passed away or become disabled. So it can provide a really great, a large deduction amount for the fund. And really, in the end, this is mainly relevant for SMSFs that are holding life and TPD insurance cover
Okay.
rather than income protection, mainly because the benefit payouts from life and TPD cover are generally much larger.
Yes,
So
bigger
the
chunks.
potential future service deduction is a lot more significant rather than for an income protection payment, because they are smaller monthly payments compared to a large life or TPD policy and super benefits. So something to consider for life and TPD, not so for income protection.
It's a good point. And I think when we're wrapping it up, and ladies and gentlemen, we're most likely going to repeat these 4 parts because they're incredibly valuable bits of information that we've been imparting. And again, Natasha, I thank you very kindly on behalf of the listening audience and on IFPA for giving me your time. But when we're talking about life insurance, we've covered off terminal incapacity, temporary and permanent disability, and now we're talking about income protection for temporary incapacity. What we're talking about here really is covering the most valuable asset, ladies and gentlemen. When you're thinking about the great journey in life, what's your most valuable asset? It's not your car, it's not your house, it's you. Okay, so and I guess it's one of those funny kind of things that a lot of people don't give too much thought to it. But Natasha, we've covered off some really good stuff here, because having this superannuation policy, having the wherewithal within the superannuation law to be able to give ourselves life cover of various forms, and you can either do it yourself or you can have one of the big funds do it on your behalf. I think we're giving ourselves a lot of options, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. There's, as you said, there's 4 different types of cover you can hold within your fund. It's really important. Super can be a really tax effective and cash flow friendly structure to hold your insurance, particularly for those of you that may struggle to prioritize cover over your, in your personal budget. So it can provide a really great solution there if you're strapped for cash, but you need to be protected. But we've talked over the last 4 series about having it in super, preservation rules, conditions of release, the tax implications of having it inside versus outside super. So you've got to weigh all of this up. And I think if you're looking at insurance, speak to your advisor about striking the right balance, making sure you've got the protection you need, and that while minimizing the long-term impact on your retirement savings, what you might do to offset that. But at the end of the day, whether it's held inside super or outside super, the ultimate goal remains the same. It's really to provide you and your family with the financial security and the peace of mind that you need when you need it most. So really important stuff. Make sure you speak to your advisor about what suits you in your circumstances.
We're out of time, as always, so fast. Natasha, thank you so kindly for your time and for being on Dollars and Making Sense.
No props, Ray. Thanks for having me on again.
Ciao.
Bye, everyone.